Top 10 Amazing People Who Survived the Impossible. Greetings everyone. Welcome to Major 10. Sometimes against all odds and in defiance of science, people manage to withstand experiences that really should have killed them. Take these 10 freak accidents, for example, of people getting impaled, crushed, and literally blown up and surviving to tell the tale. Let's dive in. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Also, smash the bell icon button so that you'll get a notification whenever we post a new video. Number 1. A Norwegian woman survived the lowest body temperature ever recorded. In May 1999, 29-year-old radiologist Anna Bagenum and 2 other young doctors set out for a day of skiing in the Kjolland Mountains of Norway. All experienced skiers headed off track to enjoy the fresh powder, but Bagenum took a fall and slid downhill, landing headfirst through the ice of a frozen stream. Her friends quickly grabbed hold of her skis and tried to pull her out, but the ice was too thick, and she was jammed between rocks. They called for help, but in the meantime, Bagenum was stuck upside down, in heavy gear, and being pulled in by icy cold water, pretty much a worst-case scenario. So she managed to find a pocket of air and struggled to stay conscious waiting for help to arrive, but after 40 minutes, she stopped moving. By the time the rescue team arrived, she had been under the ice for 80 minutes, and was frozen solid. During that time, her body temperature went as low as 56.6 degrees Fahrenheit due to extreme hypothermia. It took a team of over 100 medics at a nearby hospital 9 hours to bring her back to life. It took an extra 2 months for her to recover from paralysis and gain back most of her bodily functions. Number 2. A stick through the brain. Getting impaled through the brain is usually deadly because the brain controls all sorts of things we don't think about, which includes breathing, heartbeat, and blood pressure, etc. Yet in 1848, railroad worker Phineas Gage survived getting impaled by a 3.5-foot, 13-pound rod he was using to pack a hole with explosives. As the 25-year-old turned to greet co-workers, an explosion in the hole shot the heavy iron rod through Gage's jaw, brain, and skull like this. Like a javelin, the rod landed several yards away. Unlike a javelin, it was carrying a bit of brain with it. Gage lived for another 12 years, saddled with a drooping eyelid, seizures, and dramatic emotional and cognitive problems. He remains a subject of medical fascination to this day. Number 3. The storm survivor Eva Wisniewska. She was the top female paraglider in the world, beating out the odds to compete once again for the title of world champion. But when German national team member Eva Wisniewska was suddenly caught in the midst of a huge, violent thunderstorm in the Australian savannah, she lost control. Tossed like a doll, the helpless paraglider was sucked up tens of thousands of feet, into the freezing cold stratosphere. All around her was darkness, lightning, blinding hail, and winds with extreme, vicious velocity. She was losing oxygen fast, and her body began to freeze. Suddenly, with neither rhyme nor reason, after Eva Wisniewska had been free falling almost 2 miles, something miraculous happened. Her glider suddenly opened up entirely by itself and its wings straightened back out. The abrupt jerk woke her up. Eva Wisniewska had survived extraordinary altitudes, a long period of time unconscious, oxygen deprivation, lightning, exposure to extreme cold, and ferocious winds. Yet at the hospital, the doctors told Eva and her teammates something incredible, that she was more or less fine, and free to go. Number 4. Roy Sullivan lived to tell the tales. Roy Sullivan was either the luckiest or the unluckiest man in the world, depending on how you look at it. Although it can be a physically demanding job, Sullivan had a more physically taxing career than most. Between 1942 and 1977, he was struck by lightning 7 times. The first strike occurred in 1942 when Sullivan was on duty in a fire tower in an overlook called Miller's Head in Shenandoah National Park when a thunderstorm hit. 27 years later, in July 1969, Sullivan was again on duty, this time driving on a mountain road when lightning struck through the open window of the truck. His hair caught fire and he lost consciousness. The following year, Roy Sullivan was simply standing by his garden on his own property when lightning struck a nearby power transformer and then jumped to him, knocking him over and leaving slight burns on his left shoulder. His 4th and 5th strikes also occurred on duty. His final lightning strike occurred on June 25, 1977, when he was fishing in a pond. The lightning struck him, once again setting his hair on fire and burning his chest and stomach. Number 5. Force through a small hole. Moving at high speed through a hole that's far smaller than your body can result in striped skin, dislocated joints, broken bones, and crushed or punctured organs. That's what happened to welder Matthew Lowe in 2008, when his overalls got caught in a factory machine that transports metal parts. He felt his skin rip and heard his arm snap as the mechanism yanked him through a 5-inch opening, dragging him along the conveyor. The machine spat him out, screaming, from the other end with a broken back, pelvis, hips, and ribs, and a ruptured stomach and bowel. 6 operations and many metal pins later, the 25-year-old Lowe was back to work at the factory, hoping to get off the factory floor by training as a supervisor. Number 6. Falling onto an air hose. Allowing air into the body any way but through the respiratory system can kill. A pocket of air, or embolus, can enter the bloodstream and travel quickly to the brain, quickly causing death. But factory worker Stephen McCormack of New Zealand survived an accident in 2011 in which he fell, but first, onto the nozzle of an air hose. He screamed as his skin separated from underlying fat and muscle while high-pressure air filled much of the available space, expanding his body to nearly twice its normal size. At the hospital, the inflated man found that doctors couldn't do much, so they waited while he deflated loudly. McCormack went home with medications and an unbelievable story to tell. How did he survive? Nozzle placement which punctured his buttock but didn't hit any major blood vessels. Number 7. Michael Holmes' fall from the sky. We humans have an uneasy relationship with gravity. We count on and appreciate it for helping us stay grounded, and for keeping objects where we left them. But we also have to be concerned about falling, whether off a chair, down the stairs, or, in the case of New Zealander Michael Holmes, from the sky. After leaping from a plane in 2009, the skydiving instructor ended up with both his main parachute and the backup chute disabled. Falling at a reported rate of 70 miles per hour, he should have died from internal injuries. Instead, the lucky leaper landed on a blackberry bush, sustaining only a broken ankle and a collapsed lung. Number 8. Double lightning strikes. The 31-year-old Wagner was at an off-road racing competition in St. Joe, Texas, approximately 85 miles north of Dallas, when the storm blew in. He and another man tried to seek shelter under a tree when the lightning hit. Wagner said he was treated at the scene by a nurse named Susan before an ambulance rushed him to a nearby hospital, where he spent 18 hours. Doctors told Wagner that he would continue to experience a tingling sensation in his body for about a week, although he survived the incident. Number 9. Foreman Murph nearly sawed off his own head. In May 1984, a 74-year-old man named Foreman Murph was alone in Gapman, Mississippi, cutting down trees for a nearby timber company. He'd been a lumberjack for decades and he knew his trade well. Large branches from the trees cracked and snapped, and a shower of heavy limbs and tree trunks crashed down on Foreman Murph. He was thrown to the ground, and he either briefly lost consciousness, or a rush of adrenaline prevented the moment from adhering to his memory. Foreman's recollection of the event picked back up with the realization that his left leg was broken, and his left foot was crushed. He could also hear the roaring of his chainsaw. His chainsaw had preceded him to the ground, and Foreman had landed on top of it. Foreman was able to survive in this condition until eventually reaching the North Mississippi Medical Center in Tupelo. After 6 surgeries, and after fighting off several infections, Foreman recovered almost fully from his ordeal. Number 10. Plane crash in Africa. Wildlife conservationist Greg Rasmussen thought he was going to die in 2003, when his plane was hit by strong winds and crashed in the African bush. Over the next 27 hours, he was subjected to dehydration, painful heat, and a number of animal attacks. This included being charged by stampeding elephants and later being stalked by a lioness and approached by hyenas. Fortunately, Rasmussen was able to drag himself back to the wreckage of his aircraft despite 2 broken legs and a fractured pelvis. By the time he was finally spotted and rescued, doctors feared they would not be able to save his legs. It took surgeons around 100 operations to save them and prevent them from requiring amputation, though he now stands a full 3 inches shorter due to the damage. Have you ever survived something miraculously, or seen any incident that you can relate to? Let us know in the comments section below. Also write "I subscribe" in the comments when you subscribe. Don't forget to like this video. Also, smash the bell icon button so that you'll get a notification whenever we post a new video.